Good vibrations.
So today I've got a returning name who more often than not appears as the host of this show when he interviews me, even though he's the guest. So try and wrap your head around that one. We're talking again with my dude Ivan from Phoenix. Welcome back, brother.
Glad to be here, Mark. Happy you reached out on something that's right up my alley, TV shows. Yay.
Absolutely. I mean, you are the biggest movie buff I know, and TV shows and such. So on the rare occasions I want to get into these things, you are the go-to man. You're the guy that I call. And so I'm going to be talking about a TV series today. So first out the gate, I just have to mention I hardly ever watch TV or films. It's not that I don't want to, I just don't get the time to. I used to enjoy watching movies, but I very rarely get the chance these days. I've yet to see that Elvis film, which I really need to go and see, the Baz Luhrmann directed movie, because that's obviously music industry stuff and it's research. So I hope to get around to that. But one exception to the rule has been this amazing show, which a lot of people are talking about. It's making a big buzz out there, Stranger Things on Netflix. So my daughter has got me into this, and it was due to her pestering me to watch it that I really got hooked on this thing. And so I've now seen every episode that there's been, and I'm very, very impressed with it. It takes a very special series to impress me. And there's only 3 TV series that have ever really impressed me to this degree. So besides Stranger Things, it would be Ashes to Ashes / Life on Mars, the British TV, the BBC, no less. Are you familiar with that one?
No, I'm not.
It's awesome. Both shows are named after David Bowie records. And these came out about probably 15 years ago. And on the surface, they're cop sort of procedural dramas set in the 1970s and the 1980s, full of glorious nostalgic period detail. And it's like, you know, a straight cop show in the vein of The Sweeney or something like that. But it's layered. So it's allegorical, and it's imparting great spiritual truths, and it's metaphorical and symbolic, as all the best shows are, of course. And then the other one would be Red Riding, which was at Channel 4 in the UK. This came out probably 13 years ago, something like that. And it was set in West Yorkshire, and it was very grim. It was a very dark, sort of seedy, sort of crime thriller involving child sex trafficking and paedophile rings and horrible stuff like that, but very well made. I guess you didn't see that one either, right?
Nope.
Hey, I've seen 2 TV series that you haven't. Amazing.
I know, right?
And so Stranger Things is one that is really impressing me in the same way that those 2 did. So I did want to be talking about this with you today.
Yes.
So I want to get into some of the obvious homages and sort of pastiches that are included in this show towards movie directors and other films from the 1980s. I'm sure you've picked many out. But the thing I most took away from this, and I think the reason why it's appealed to me so much, besides the 80s nostalgia, and we could talk about that as well, is that this show was originally set to be titled Montauk. And it's obviously all about the MK Ultra mind control program coming out of the CIA. There was this military facility called Camp Hero at Montauk Point at the end of Long Island, which is your old stomping ground, right? You're a New Yorker.
New York, yeah. That's actually closer to Joe Murray's stomping grounds. He's out in Long Island ways.
Well, okay. Yeah, so they were going to call this show Montauk, and it was based around these real-life experiments that took place between 1970 and 1983 on primarily young boys. And it was designed to develop and study psychic abilities and things such as remote viewing and telekinesis and telepathy and these sorts of things. Stuart Swerdlow claims to be a survivor of that project, actually, and he's done a whole bunch of interviews. And
Correct.
So the program makers then changed the name from Montauk to Stranger Things, I guess after the phrase Stranger Things might happen, and they do. And that's what I think holds the most value about this narrative for me, knowing that it's steeped in reality. And a lot of this stuff actually really went on. Is that something you took away from this?
Oh yeah, definitely. Right off the bat, the conspiracies popping out was you have multiple different things, secret government agencies in a small town using like electricity company building for their hidden labs. You got multi-dimensional doorways, the upside down being stumbled upon. You have it's a whole bunch of stuff on there. You have multiple governments fighting over this, and subsequent seasons you see that the Russians were doing the same thing. So surprise, surprise, like, hey, thought that was only American made. But very interesting show. That was the hook. That first season was how all these conspiracy things are just flung about. That it's like, hey, wait a minute, what are they doing here? It's in people's faces. They're just letting you know all the stuff that was going on.
I know, right? I mean, I'm not so much into the monster stuff, I kind of groan a bit when the Mind Flayer comes out. I mean, the Demogorgon was a decent monster, but the Mind Flayer is a bit boring. What I most got from this was the scenes in the mind control facility, the Department of Energy facility, where you've got Matthew Modine's character, Dr. Brenner, experimenting on Millie Bobby Brown's character, 11. And Dr. Brenner...
AKA... Papa, they call him Papa. So you got the father masculine figure there.
Yeah, and in real life MK Ultra nightmare scenarios, apparently, the subjects were required to refer to the handler as Papa. And Dr. Brenner there is clearly, I would say, based around Dr. Ewan Cameron, who's one of the most notorious doctors at the MK Ultra program, working out of Montreal, Canada there. And they moved the site of the story from Long Island, as it would have been Montauk, to Indiana. It's a
fictional town, right? Hawkins, Indiana. Yeah.
And also we've got some references to a mind control facility being in the Nevada desert. So in season 4, you see 11 being taken back to one of these horrible places. And this one is underground in the desert, which I would say is an obvious reference to Area 51, the deep underground military base out there in Nevada.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Correct.
We're getting a lot of truth in this show. It's presented as fiction, but there's a lot of truth bombs being dropped here.
Yeah, but then how they do. If it's in a movie or a TV show and it's a little bit of a comedy or a sci-fi thing, it can be shrugged off as like, oh, you've said in the past, Mark, oh, you watch too much TV, mate. You watch too many movies, mate. So now Stranger Things, oh yeah, you watch that TV show. It's like, no, but it's true. Oh yeah, right. Sure it is.
That's right. And as well as the references to MK Ultra, they talk about that being a real life CIA program, as it was / is, probably still going on. We also get a reference to Agent Orange from the Vietnam War era, having caused birth defects in Hopper's child. And that was another, genuine black op, which really did take place. And they're telling us about that one as well.
That's right. Funny how movies and TV shows are easy scapegoats for letting cats out of the bags because they could just blame it on, again, just being a TV show or a movie. And I know even the origins of 11 also are interesting because that was it like season 2 or something. They delve a little more into the mother, how it was like, hey, the summer of love kind of thing, the 60s, LSD, Woodstock, and all this stuff.
All that hippie crap. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I think that was the best part of season 2 for me, was the flashbacks to how 11 came to be in that facility, because her mother was voluntarily taking part in the program, but she didn't realize what she was getting herself into, and her child was basically stolen from her at birth. They told her she'd had a miscarriage, and then they fucking lobotomize her basically with electroshock treatment.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Easiest way to hide the truth is make people not remember it. And if they won't do it voluntarily, they'll do it for you. And also the girl's name 11 is interesting too when we get to other symbolism, double numbers, 11, 1, 1. That has to be the star that we're following. It couldn't be just a 10. She couldn't be perfect, like godlike, or even just a 1. Or no, 11.
Yeah, well, 11 is a master number in Freemasonry. And also you find her name being abbreviated to L. They call it L, E-L,
yes.
Which I believe means God coming in, in Hebrew from the word Elohim. It's a contraction of that word.
There you go.
So we've got some messaging going on there.
And that also we have that the upside down. The upside down is very interesting when we think about Satanism, satanic, the world, everything being inverted. So they couldn't just say alternate earth or the dark place or like Get Out where they say the sunken place. No, the upside down is literally is like there's the inversion. There's your, hell on earth kind of thing,
Exactly that. So they're telling us we live in a satanically inverted society, but they also seem to be communicating that this place could be heaven or could be hell, depending on the consciousness that we apply to it, I guess, and the choices we make in life. It could be one thing or the other. The potential is there for either.
And then how it comes about was interesting too, because I'm reminded of the, CERN, right? We got these big particle accelerator stuff, so a lot of energy to, in real life, allegedly, 10 years ago, was it, that happened, and people were saying that there were like many black holes popped up, and here in the last month, July 5th, I think, they went ahead and reactivated that like a whole bunch of times stronger than what they initially did. So that was interesting by itself. But just looking at they had to blame like a person. So it's the government doing an experiment secretly underground. They're doing it in Hawkins in the US, but then Russia's doing their own thing also. And, somewhere along the lines, all this massive amount of energy gets focused or directed in some way. And, oh my God, we have an accident and something inadvertent happens. We open a portal to another dimension or something. Like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah. Doesn't it suck when that happens? But yeah, so that was my thing that stood out there was like, wait, CERN, wasn't it something in real life happening like that? And look at, they tie those things together. And there was a movie that kind of hinted at that too, that second Dan Brown book, Angels and Demons, the Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons.
Yeah,
that was about particle accelerators also. So it's like, these themes, and not just this TV show, but I've been mentioning that a lot of movies and TV shows in the last decade were talking a lot of multi-earths, multiple dimensions, alternate realities, and all this stuff. And here's a big show, a big hit. Why? Because it resonates with the subconscious of the people. Like, oh yeah, remember how not too long ago, Mark, we had a lot of dealings with these Mandela effect, that people like, I don't remember this, but the shirt was a different color, or it wasn't this, or it was that, or she was wearing braces, or she wasn't wearing braces, or this. Like, a lot of people are suggesting like, since that CERN thing got turned on, we're in an alternate reality now. Things kind of changed, and hence Stranger Things. We got a TV show that harps on that, and the upside down. Maybe we are in the upside down right now. We think this is our regular normal world.
That's right. And the first season of the show came out in 2016, and this CERN program was definitely well underway then. And there's a scene in season 3 where it's being blamed on the Russians, of course, bit of pre-programming there, because everything is. You've got these Russians blasting a hole in the sort of time-space continuum and going through to this alternate reality. And it looks just like images that we've got from CERN, or descriptions of what happens at CERN. And I think the officials at CERN have even said, we don't know what we're going to find in these alternate dimensions. There could be all kinds of entities and stuff there. And in the show, there are, and they bleed through. So it's just so much truth there.
Right. And I also remember not too long ago hearing about the, the supercomputer or something like that, about opening a portal, a doorway to another reality where technology is so advanced. And from that part of reality, they can take, the faster computers or the quantum computer and bring it to our reality. And hence, look at how technology is advancing, AI and all this stuff. And it's like, I wonder, doesn't have to be an actual physical kind of demonic creature that they bring. Could be a demonic technology, the quantum computer, stuff that we're like, we don't need that here. Detachment from nature. That's the ultimate kind of, inversion. And look, they're pushing more and more AI, those robots, those dogs, all this artificial stuff that's grabbing hold. And now what the jabs, nanotechnology, maybe computer chips inside us. And another show you may need to you may want to check out is Westworld. On that show, they're really pushing the artificial humans, the hosts, and then the regular humans, and how they're tinkering with DNA, getting stuff inside human bodies to make them more computer or robotic. I mean, hello. But we could talk about that one some other day. So even this, all this stuff, everything's connected. When you talk to me, I'm more a holistic kind of person. So even though we're focused on Stranger Things, there's a lot of things that it connects to other movies, TV shows from the past and from the present, and things that are upcoming even still. That's like, wow, look at the big picture. It's just another piece of the puzzle, And that's the thing, is that there's so many films and TV shows out there. The distractions are enormous. There's so much to distract people with, that now they can just put the truth in them and people just don't care. It's like, hey. And even in some of these shows, they admit to evil winning. There's a show called Evil, and it's very good. That's sad that a show called Evil is good, but I like it because it's showing the truth, how evil is winning, how there's, the majority of the people, they have satanic ways, satanic beliefs, evil, is flourishing, and the good is like, ugh, it's, sad to say. But
on the subject of entities bleeding through from other dimensions, I've just sent you a picture link there in the chat. I don't know if you have a chance to click on that, but listeners might recall a few years ago, there was an image doing the rounds from the Vatican. It was in Ratzinger's era, and it's a picture of him sat on his throne. And there's this design in the background, this sort of mural thing. And it's absolutely hideous. It looks completely satanic, completely demonic. And there's this entity that's kind of bursting out of the wall. And there's all this kind of horrible stuff, toxic material around it. And to my thinking, it looks just like the freaking Demogorgon. And the stuff that he's surrounded with looks just like the portrayal of the Upside Down. It's just like it. And we were told that this was supposed to be a rendition of Jesus, the resurrection. Yeah, right. Really looks like everyone's idea of Jesus, doesn't it?
Right.
So I think probably round about the time that this photo was circulating, that would have been when season 1 of this show was airing. And that's the friggin' Demogorgon right there.
It looks freaking weird. If you zoom in, maybe, then you might be like, oh, okay, yeah, there is some humanoid kind of person there with their arms up and, I don't know, taking the hair and putting it to the side. I'm thinking something out of like the Alien movies, Aliens and all that. It's like some deformity. But yeah, that looks very wholesome and wonderful, that background. Yeah, sure it does.
Really nice, right?
Yeah. I know people have seen this, and it was popular a few years ago that anybody with any conspiratorial dwellings or dealings or consciousness stuff, or being on any social media, they came across this shot and be like, oh yeah, I do remember that. Just I think it's the same facility, isn't it, Mark? That when you zoom out, that the entrance or the hall, the design, it looks like serpent. It looks like a snake eyes with the teeth or something, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's got those overtones to it. Very H.P. Geiger-esque, as you say.
Yep.
So we talked about Eleven, the character of Eleven, amazingly portrayed by Millie Bobby Brown. I have to wonder about her. First of all, what's the Bobby doing there? What's that all about? Yeah. Why put Bobby in the middle of your name? Is Bobby Brown the best role model? Really? I have to wonder about Millie Bobby Brown herself. Could she possibly have been subject to the very mind control that is portrayed in this show? I always think that with outstanding performances from actors or even musicians, I don't know if you feel the same, but, some of these actors just throw themselves into their roles so much that it almost seems like it's a mind control alter in itself. It's like they've slipped into a dissociative personality, and she just portrays this role to a T, and just makes me wonder, I've got a few questions raising there.
Yeah, you do got to question that, whether it's, people born with the talent, or,
right.
Training is one thing, but then other kind of training, what other kind of things are done behind the scenes to kind of, that they're a blank slate when they're regular, and then when it comes time to act, boom, the programming kicks in.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Exactly that. I mean, she's British, and her normal speaking voice, although she's starting to develop a sort of mid-Atlantic accent now, but she's very well-spoken, sort of public school, posh British. And yet she pulls off this amazing American accent very convincingly. And the other way round, through my research into the music industry, you've got the likes of Britney Spears, Mariah Carey, and Nicki Minaj. And all three of them can pull off this great British girl accent. So they sound like a sort of society, posh British girl in interviews. And with those three, that's got to be an alter. I'm convinced that's a mind control alter. So maybe it works the other way around as well. So you've got two other British actors. You've got Charlie Heaton, who portrays Jonathan Byers. And you've got, what's the guy's name? Jamie Campbell Bower, is it, that portrays one?
That spoiler alert, that's the one that ends up being the bad guy. What was it? I even forgot the
which
name.
We don't find out until season 4. So yeah, definitely
Right.
a spoiler alert. But yeah, Henry Creel. And I just wanted to talk about that character as well, because
Is it Vecna? Vecna, right? Or something like that?
Vecna, yeah. It's one, aka Vecna. So he's one in the mind control facility. Millie Bobby Brown is 11. She's the 11th child in that program, but he's the original one that was brought in by Dr. Brenner to have all this experimentation done on him. And basically,
so even in these things, they have quote unquote evolution. It's not like they stumble upon something by mistake. You think 11 was the first time they're dabbling with something like, oh my God, look, something bad happened. Oh, what a shame. No, you come to find out, yes, she's called 11 for a reason. There's been 10 previous iterations where they messed around with someone and did some, questionable or evil things, and things get out of control. And they're like, oh, just scrap that. Next, who's the next victim? Next, so that shows again the mentality of these people where there is no quit in them. It's like, well, no, we'll get it right the next time. 10 times where you've had horrible things happen isn't enough for you to question. Just because we can doesn't mean you should. Nah, the 12th time will be right, the 15th time, just keep going. That's their mentality.
That's right. And there's some similarities there with Red Riding, this British show that I mentioned to you, where you've got the kids that are being kept captive by the paedophile ring being tattooed with a number. And the kids are also kept in underground tunnels, underground bases. So I have to wonder if the Duffer Brothers might have seen Red Riding and picked up an idea or two from it. Just a thought. And you've got one, then, Vecna, who gets banished into this alternate reality by 11. He sort of gets blasted into this netherworld, and he becomes the creator of the other monsters. He creates the Demogorgon and the Mind Flayer in the Upside Down. And this kind of evokes ideas of God as the One. So he's called One. And it's like the singularity. Everything starts from that one point. So it's like inversion again. So whereas God can be seen as the one creative force, now he's become a creative force, a singularity, but it's not for good, it's for evil. It's the exact opposite of what it should be.
You can also tiptoe on consequence also, because it was by things being done here by, quote unquote, us humans, scientific, community, research. We know what happens with this. Never thinking of consequence. Look at the consequence. All this negative stuff that's happening is based off the consequence of doing things that were pretty much outside of natural law. Leave it alone. Do you have a right to mess with this? No, not really. Leave it alone. But yeah, there you have it. Man wanting to be God.
That's right, because they're fucking around with things that they shouldn't be and experimenting where they shouldn't be without consent, then it leads to all manner of chaos and destruction. And that is a metaphor for the world in which we find ourselves. And I attempted to layer my allegorical novel. So I had a little go at fiction, and some listeners may have heard Ivan interviewing me at the time I brought out my book, The Cause and the Cure, at the end of 2019. What's in a name, huh? What did I know about what was to come? And there was all kinds of symbolism and allegory in that. And I was largely inspired by Stanley Kubrick, to be honest, because I just marvel at how much that guy was able to get into his movies. When you strip away the surface narrative, which is always fascinating and entertaining enough anyway, but when you get beneath that, there's just so much else that he's able to get in there. And I attempted to do that with The Cause and the Cure. And I think it can be read on many different levels. I'm pretty happy with how that all turned out. But I'm just so in awe of how much the creators of this show, Stranger Things, have managed to cram in there. So you've got the great 80s nostalgia on the surface, but then you've got spiritual, Gnostic, Hermetic, alchemical teachings in all the subsurface stuff. If you know what to look for, it's just amazing how much they've managed to get in there. I just can't imagine how you can, cram so much into a story.
Yeah, I mentioned myself with the holistic approach or always being holistic. I'm sure these creators also holistically look at everything and they're like, okay, we can take from religion, we can take from science, we can take from history, we can take from the conspiratorial realm, we can take from, everything and just combine it all. And that's why it's such a hot show, because it has a bit that will resonate with everybody. So, yeah.
So do you think that's been the big appeal of Stranger Things, the fact that it's got something for every kind of demographic and every kind of consciousness level, if you like? So if you're kind of advanced in occult, arcane studies, you can identify these spiritual teachings and these principles and components that they've stripped in there cleverly. But if you're someone that just likes a bit of goofy kind of entertainment, you like monsters, you like a bit of 80s nostalgic fun, then that's there for you as well. So it just appeals on so many different levels.
Yeah, it's a familiarity on the subconscious. Yeah, that way the newcomers, people that kind of had an idea that something might be going on but never really paid it much mind, they'll see this and be like, oh, that's interesting. I always thought there was something funny about this or that, or I always had an idea that this might be going on. And then, like you said, the advanced ones, it's kind of like, yeah, I knew all that already, but they might also approach it as, wow, see, check out this show. I told you, I remember how you thought I was crazy for mentioning how this might be and alternate realities and dimensions and the government being involved in stuff. And you said I was a nut job. Look, they're even making TV shows about it now. Then people will be like, oh, wow, okay. So it does kind of cover both, the range of the newbies, the experience, the higher conscious, the lower conscious, however you want to describe it. It, has a bit for everyone. And at the end, what happens with all this? Netflix keeps making more and more money. More of our attention gets focused on that show. However you want to look at it, positive, hey, the information's reaching more people, or the negative, people are being distracted with this instead of going out and doing, things in the real world. But, the balance is, yeah, you watch this stuff, you take in the information, or you point people to that, to watch this show and learn some things from it, but then also to do things in the real world. So like look, we're recording this podcast now. So you're not just watching the show over and over and over again. You got people that they just binge and they just sit there and day begins, day ends, and they're still sitting on the same couch watching the same old stuff. That's not productive. Whereas some people can take it and move on. And that's the key. Like I said, holistic. Spend the time to learn, but then you spend the time to share and to teach and, and make the connections and all that kind of stuff. So.
And the US government really doesn't come out of this show looking too good. They're shown as being involved in all manner of immoral and shady activities. You got the character Ted, who's the father of Nancy and Mike. And at one point, it shows his
I know
house,
where you're going.
Yeah, his house is being raided by the FBI and his wife's all concerned. And Ted says, "Don't worry, honey. This is our government. They've only got our best interests at heart." And there's one
I wanted
scene
to
where,
shoot the TV at that point. I'm like, really?
I know, right?
Dang, that's my neighbors. Those are neighbors. We know people like that.
There's a sign outside the Wheeler household at one point where it says Reagan Bush, vote Reagan Bush, because you know that in the 80s, Ted would have been voting for Ronald Reagan. If Ted were around now, he'd be a Donald Trump voter. And, Ted would have had about 8 vaccines plus the booster and would put his mask on every time he goes to the supermarket and would do everything his government tells him because he thinks they've got his best interests at heart. So we all know a Ted, don't we?
Yep.
He's the ultimate normie.
Exactly.
Do you think with those viewers that are liking the sort of surface elements of this show, they just like the thrilling sort of narrative and they like the monsters and all the sci-fi stuff, do you think some of the more hidden stuff is maybe appealing to them on a subconscious level. It's kind of evoking archetypal memories or ancestral memories, or just sort of speaking to them in a very symbolic way without them even realizing it. And could that also be adding to this show's appeal?
Yeah, I think part of it can be like that, yeah. But I also think it's ultimately the reason why it's being made and why it's out there like this is for that feeling of living vicariously, you know. So aside from like the Matrix movies and action stuff of actually doing things, you know, and fighting, there is fighting here. You got the kids. Look, it's the kids, the children know what's going on. The teenagers were somewhat reluctant, but then they saw it and they learned what's going on. The adults completely oblivious until actually, you know, push comes to shove. But, you know, it's a thing about living vicariously. So it's, you know, affirmation like, oh yeah, something's going on, but at least this TV show's about it. You can sit and watch a TV show about, you know, the real out there kind of thing, about the strange things. But are the people going to do anything about it really? Not really. But, you know, knowing is, as they say, half the battle. So that's at least one positive we can take from this, that people will have at least an idea that things are not as, you know, normal or as, you know, what is it? There's more that meets the eye to what's going on. You know, it's not just the physical, there's also the spiritual and all this other stuff going on. But yeah, I don't know. I that's where I stand with that. It's another form of the you know, another tool to have people live vicariously. They'll sit on the couch, watch this, and be like, that's cool. They'll know about it, but what else are they going to do with it?
So I guess the overriding question in all this is, are the Duffer Brothers, the creators of the show, really warning us or trying to help us by placing the truth in plain sight? Or is it all part of the belief system that they would have been schooled in? Because obviously these two brothers know a thing or two about a thing or two. They've obviously been, you know, clued in on certain occult knowledge, and they're putting it into their show. So are they doing it to try and help people wake up, or are they doing it as sort of revelation of the method, placing the truth in plain sight so that we can no longer make the claim that we weren't told, as part of their sort of ritualistic belief systems?
Well, I could probably compare them to the Wachowskis, right? Because the Wachowskis,
yeah, exactly.
You know, exactly. Yeah. It's a thing of, there comes a point where you know what's going on. It could be independently. Look at us. Well, at least I could speak for myself. And I think you too. Well, I don't know. You were in the music industry there, Mark. You're a little sus. I don't know. But,
well, yeah.
I know.
I did meet Beyonce once.
Ugh, there you go. Tainted.
Been trying to get that demon out of me ever since.
That's right. But no, I mean, you know, it depends. I tried to do a little bit, not very hard research into the Duffer Brothers, and I didn't, you know, dig too deep. So I don't know where they came from, if they come from a family of money, connections, military background, hint, hint, you know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You know, we talk about that a lot. But no.
Youngish guys. They seem, you know, quite young, younger than us.
Yeah, 20s, 30s maybe. But yeah, you never know. It could be information. People come across information, there's interest, and then their field of, you know, profession, they want to become filmmakers, TV, you know, producers, and do something. And like, oh, wow, cool. Some, you know, some things are a miss, some things are a hit. And to be a hit, maybe though, that's where that line becomes a little, you know, tricky. That's like, okay, are you going to stick to your morals and, you know, stick to your guns and do what's right and not take the money, quote unquote? Or are you going to be like, okay, fine, I'll take the money and I'll make whatever cuts or whatever little suggestions the, you know, corporation, the agency or whatever suggests to do. But, you know, do they become a sellout? Or are they still, you know, like you were saying, is it something with, you know, revelation of the method kind of thing? Or so I don't know. I don't know for sure. And that always depends on the creator themselves, you know, and what happens afterwards. If we see that they have another TV show, they do other movies, that they do more and more. And it's like, okay, now these guys, obviously, you know, they're in it for the money. You know, they're getting paid. They're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing this and that. And we don't see any kind of positive message in there. It's like, all right, they've been had. Or, you know, like any other kind of somewhat sane person, all right, they have a platform, they can make their money, and they'll put the good message out there, sneak it in, but also tied in with whatever the powers that should not be want, but they sneak in a little bit here and there. I guess that's the best we can hope for. Because I know me, when I first started this journey of truth seeking and truth speaking, I had a crazy idea of starting my own, production studio or something, having something out here in Arizona. But the money it would take to do that, and to just focus on positive, content, just things to wake people up. Is there really a market for that? You need to have the talent, the skills, to be able to make it entertaining and have that hook for people to, be attracted to what's good. And this ties back to that whole thing about evil winning. Look at what's up. Look at Stranger Things. Is that unicorns and rainbows and all happy, things? No, it's darkness, the upside down. There's blood, there's gore, there's suffering, all this stuff going on, and that's a hit. So imagine trying to put something, wholesome and positive out. People will be like, yeah, that's boring, man. Where's the sex violence and all this kind of stuff? So, Well,
that's an interesting observation, because when I was working on the narrative for my novel, The Cause and the Cure, initially I had in mind for there to be more murders and for it to be more violent. And then I thought, does the world really need another story like that? We're drowning in stories full of violence and destruction and stuff. So I made the story much more uplifting and positive overall. Yes, there's a few murders in it, but they're there to kind of make a point and illustrate some spiritual truths. And I didn't put any sexually explicit stuff in there because it's just not needed. And I just thought, well, that's what people find exciting, isn't it? Stories where that sort of stuff happens. It's much more difficult to make a story exciting with a happy ending, where everything's positive and beneficial and good, and people don't get hurt, and everything is great. It's a bit of a problem, really, because entertainment is not that stimulating when the message is positive and uplifting.
Right. It's not to say that there are any markets for that. No, we have markets for comedies, romantic comedies, dramas. They're there. But are those the ones making, the 250 million, 500 million, the 1 billion at the box office? No, the big money makers, the one that people come out in droves over and over again and watch 3, 4, 5 times in theaters and spend the money on, are the ones with all this action and bigger than life kind of thing. But yeah, there's market for the good, wholesome stuff, but you're not going to see it take off the way these other ones, are in today's current consciousness. Now, if in a different society consciousness where it's like, yeah, truth, love, and freedom, if that were the main thing, yeah, then good dramas, romantic stuff, and, truth movies, that would be huge. But society, what do we have? We always say it. We live in a satanic society. Selfishness, me, step on the other guy, So even those romantic comedies and dramas, the devil wears Prada kind of thing. It was like, well, there wasn't any violence in there or action, but yet the theme is still about me stepping on someone else and, succeeding in a comedic way or in a romantic way, but it's always about service to the self. See, so it doesn't always have to be the action of me killing the other person, fighting the other person. It's still the concept of me winning, the individual first over, your fellow brother or sister. So that concept is the thing right there. Yeah.
You mentioned the Wachowskis earlier, and I love some of their films. They're deeply flawed as individuals, of course, pushing agendas and stuff. But one of their movies I loved was Cloud Atlas, because that's all about consequentialism and what happens as the result of chosen behaviors and actions. And you see certain characters through successive lifetimes. They seem to be reincarnated into new timelines, and they're bringing with them the karma that they've accumulated in previous lives, and they have to work that debt off. And that is actually quite a beneficial and positive aspect to that narrative being communicated there. And it's very rare for a mainstream Hollywood film to carry that kind of message, as you've just said.
Right. And even this recent season 4 of Stranger Things, you made me think of, was it Eddie? The cult leader, the satanic cult leader, what was it? The Hellfire
Heavy Metal
Club.
guy.
The Hellfire Club. And yet he's taken that that reputation. So he's running, he's hiding, because of that. And what happens at the end, again, spoiler, instead of running and being selfish, he stops, stands, and fights, and does the biggest thing that a lot of people never really notice, are in the very good, excellent action and any kind of movie, is sacrifice. Sacrifice is always one of the biggest things that the good guys do. And we notice a lot of times bad guys do that too, but they sacrifice other people. The evil villain, the henchman, the tyrant, willing to sacrifice hundreds or thousands of his order followers, and that's why they win. Whereas when the good guys win, it's always the individual that puts others in front of himself, before himself, and sacrifices himself. So I noticed that was very interesting. And here in Stranger Things this season, with that one character, he was, shat upon, they were like, this guy's a cult leader and Fire Club, like, bah. But yet he just stands and makes the choice, the conscious choice, again, the consequence, like, no, instead of letting the consequence control me, I'm going to control the consequence. I'm going to sacrifice myself to do what's right. So I thought that was very, that stood out for me for this season. And the show tends to do that a lot too, because Eleven does the same thing. She fights for her friends. It's out of her friends. She's like an orphan, doesn't have a family, but yet she sacrifices to save her friends.
Well, actually, at the end of season 1, it appears that Eleven has sacrificed herself for her friends and for humanity in putting down the monster. She seems to have paid with her life.
Yep.
She didn't, of course, but that's the way it appears. And then at the end of season 3, with Hopper, David Harbour's character, it appears that he's also sacrificed his life. Turns out that he hasn't either, but it's the same idea. It's that same motif being conveyed there, self-sacrifice. And with Eddie, he makes that ultimate sacrifice in laying down his life, but he's still being demonized for it afterwards. He doesn't get the recognition for having done it. He's still being referred to as this satanic monster that caused all these killings,
Yeah, that exactly. I forgot about that. That even that was the little emotional tug there. That with was it Dougie or whatever, the kid with the, what's his name, the ball cap one. Dustin, there we go. Yeah. That Dustin, that even he's crying there with the father of the kid, telling him, no, he wasn't the way, it didn't go down the way they're saying. He was a hero. He saved us and stuff. So it's, again, the few that know the truth, whereas the majority go off the lie.
That's right. And we were mentioning the allegorical nature of Stranger Things there, and how all these different ideas are being conveyed beneath the surface. But do you feel that pretty much all TV shows, and particularly movies now, are conveying some sort of message like this? It doesn't seem to be like the odd one does. It seems to be like the majority do. And, these Hollywood script writers wouldn't know how to construct a movie narrative if they weren't putting across allegorical, metaphorical kind of symbolic teachings. I mean, you watch many more movies than me, so do you think these are the majority now?
Yeah, I think it's always been there. It's just like people like us that we've become more, aware of it. Our awareness of this being the theme is so blatant now that we can go back, and it happens where we go back and watch a 10, 20, 50, 60-year-old movie from the 20s, 30s, or whatever, and we're like, holy crap, here's a theme, in this. There's this, archetype, there's this allegory or metaphor or that. So it's a thing of, once we educate ourselves as to know what we're looking at, then we see it everywhere. And then you start seeing the ones that stand out. 9 times out of 10, you always got to have sacred masculine, sacred feminine, sacred masculine, sacred feminine. They're always in there. Or the consequentialism. You're always going to show, people keep the first 3/4 of a movie, no regard for, the consequence of their actions. They just keep doing the messed up thing. And then at the end, they realize it, and then they do the right thing, and then it changes the consequence, and then the movie ends. So it's always been
Groundhog
there.
Day, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's always been there. It's just a matter of when we develop our awareness of these things that we start noticing it. And it's not just, in the current films and TV shows. They've always been there. We just never really, paid much attention or had that recognition for it.
Yeah, you mentioned the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine there. I delivered a talk at the weekend at the Glastonbury Symposium about mind control in James Bond stories, which is a bit of a departure for me, getting away from music for a minute. I really enjoyed having something else to talk about. And I made the point, which was first put across by an author called Philip Gardner in a book called The Bond Code. His observation was that you always have a Bond girl in these movies, right? And they were always there in the Ian Fleming original novels as well. There was always a leading lady, and Bond would always join forces with this girl. And in the early movies, they were, bimbos for the most part. And then as the series progressed, the women got more strong and sort of had something to offer themselves. But Gardner's point was that Bond only ever gets to defeat the supervillain in each story once he's joined forces with the Bond girl. So it's a fusing of the sacred masculine and sacred feminine energies, and one can't exist without the other, and evil can't be defeated, and morality, right action can't be achieved until you've brought those elements of the self, would be the metaphor, together, which I thought was a very interesting observation.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I'm just going off the top of my head. A lot of the Bond movies, I'm like, yeah, him and the girl, once they work together, especially
always a Bond girl.
Yeah, especially Goldfinger, pussy galore. He's able to take care of pussy galore to make her say, you know what, I'm going to do the right thing. So when she finally comes aboard, that's when things change. But even in Stranger Things, every season, right from the beginning, we had the sheriff, Hopper, masculine, drinking, smoking, and, depressed because, his family lost his family, his daughter died, and blah, blah, but the masculine was there. And then we haven't even mentioned yet, the mother, played by Winona Ryder. So, she was always kind of weak and kind of just paranoid. Everybody, like, she's just crazy. She's just nobody listening to her. But yet it was her love for her son. Like, no, he's reaching out to me from the other side. Something, I'm communicating to him and blah. So her sacred feminine of nurture and care was there. But not until she and Hopper come together, there it is. That's when things start, happening, and it is that bad. And even she herself accesses her sacred masculine when she actually picks up arms and starts fighting and doing things. And then from season 2 on, even the end of season 1, what do we see with Hopper? His sacred masculine gives way to some of the sacred feminine when he leaves the little bowl of Egos, nurturing for 11, but he knows, yes, he becomes nurturing. See, so even this show, hints at that stuff of the importance of the sacred masculine, sacred feminine within both sexes, both male and female, how we need it. We need it.
Yeah. I'm just thinking as you say this, you've got some other pairings as well. There's Jonathan who gets together with Nancy. So there's another fusion of male and female going on there. And Nancy, in the first series, she's very feminine and prim and well, not so proper, but, very sort of delicate and feminine. And by the end of the show, she's holding machine guns and throwing grenades and shit. And she's taken on some very masculine elements. So, yeah, there's a blurring of the lines with that couple as well.
Exactly.
And even Steve and Robin.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. From Scoops Ahoy.
Yeah, that's
the ice
right.
Cream store.
Not to mention, I mean, this is the thing in the last decade more so than ever is that agenda. The LGBTQ XYZ agenda is going on here, where that's Ethan Hawke's daughter. So that's got to make her a lesbian.
Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke.
Yep. And then they have the boy that was in the Upside Down.
Will is shown to be gay. Yeah,
he's showing. Yep, they're showing all these little tendencies. It's like, okay, I mean, I get the quote unquote normalization of stuff, but then there's a difference between it being, organically written into a story where it doesn't stand out like look at me kind of thing, and that's 9 times out of 10 what we get is this look at me kind of thing. It's like, oh really, they forcing it instead of just letting things be naturally there, and you're like, oh okay, yeah, of course.
So I saw quite a lot of nods to Stanley Kubrick in a lot of elements from this show. Which sort of homages to Kubrick did you pick out?
Kubrick, I was picking up a lot of Spielberg stuff.
Oh, Spielberg for sure, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's a lot of E.T. stuff. E.T., there's a part in ET where they have him dress up as a girl. 11, she's bald in the first season, so they sneak her into the school, dress her up, quote unquote, as a girl when she actually is a girl. So that's kind of weird, but yet they made it look kind of like, oh my god, look, she's dressed as a girl. So that correlation or that similarity
out of ET, yeah.
And then also ET, when they're being chased in ET and on the bikes, and it lifts them off to fly through, get past the federal agents with the guns there waiting. And Stranger Things, they have that same similarity. They're riding, or they're trying to get away, and the van is coming towards them head on, and she makes the van flip over them. So that's a similarity to ET. So there's little things. So it's
definitely Kubrick-esque, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then with Jaws also, the upside down, all the monsters, they were kind of Jaws like, similarities with the creature, And
Close Encounters, I think part of Close Encounters was filmed or set in Indiana, as this show was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what else from Spielberg? I guess that's the obvious ones. No, the reason I mentioned Kubrick is because I spotted quite a few sort of nods there. Obviously, you got Matthew Modine from Full Metal Jacket. He was Private Joker in that movie, and he plays Dr. Brenner in this show. And then there was some nods to 2001: A Space Odyssey. There's a scene which I'm sure a lot of people missed in season 4, where 11 is back in the mind control facility below ground, and she's walking through one of these tunnels. And the camera kind of rotates 360 degrees. She just goes round, does a complete circle. And that's obviously out of the scene in 2001 where the astronauts are jogging to keep fit. It's Gary Lockwood's character, and he's kind of, like boxing, air boxing.
So the whole station is rotating, but we're fixed on him, so we're seeing he stays still, kind of.
Yeah, right? in exactly the same way as the space station was supposed to be rotating as he ran around it. Right. As 11's running through the tunnel, it rotates in the same way. It's definitely an homage to Kubrick, to that film. Also, when 11 goes remote viewing and she goes into that black sort of area with the watery floor, there's these groaning kind of sounds in the background. And they're very similar to what we get at the end of 2001, where Keir Dulley's character, Bowman, is viewing himself. He's viewing an older version of himself, and he goes into this kind of weird dimension, and you get the same sort of sounds in the background. And 11's remote viewing just reminds me of Bowman looking out from that spacesuit at the older version of himself sitting at the table eating the meal. You remember that?
I think you're right, and even the breathing. Because
heavy breathing.
Inside the helmet, you're in there with them, and you hear the breathing while they're viewing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then The Shining. There's scenes in The Shining where Danny, the boy, is having these flashbacks or these visions of these blood-splattered bodies. The little girls, the twin girls that have been all chopped up, and there's blood all over the walls. So when you have the scene in the lab where all these scientists have been chopped up and there's blood everywhere, that seems to be very similar to that. I think that was inspired by The Shining.
And then you also have Winona Ryder's character when she's trying to break through the wall because she thinks the light's flashing, that her son's behind the wall.
Like
she
Shelley
takes the
Duvall.
axe and she's smashing into the wall, and it's the same kind of setup as The Shining with Jack Nicholson taking the axe to the door.
That's right. Good point. And actually, David Harbour, who plays Hopper, looks a bit like Jack Nicholson. And there's a scene in season 4 where he's in the gulag in Russia, in Siberia, whatever, and it's snow everywhere. And it's very similar to that last scene in The Shining where he's in the maze and he's all frozen. I noticed that for a moment. And they made Hopper look like Joseph Stalin at the end of season 3, because that's Russian themed. He's got that big bushy moustache and he's in some Russian uniform. And also in season 3, he looked like Magnum PI, Tom Selleck, with that friggin' moustache.
80s. That's 80s for you.
Yeah. And he looks like Indiana Jones in seasons 1 and 2 with that big ass hat. And then, just moving away from Kubrick, so many other sort of movie references. You have 11 escaping from the facility through the drain pipe, and that put me in mind of the Shawshank Redemption, where Tim Robbins escapes from the prison and comes out through that sewage pipe.
Yep. Even just the concept of all that torture, kind of the MK Ultra stuff. That's a Clockwork Orange right there, right?
True. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So there's another Kubrick reference. And what other sort of homages did you spot overall?
Oh, damn. Like I said, it's been a while since I've seen these. I could have prepped a little better. But no.
What about David Lynch? There's some David Lynch in there, I would say.
What did you notice, David Lynch? Like,
well, it's kind of Twin Peaks-ish, the way you got Will going missing in the first season and the whole town is concerned about where this kid's gone. It's like the disappearance of Laura Palmer in Twin Peaks. You know, I got those vibes from it.
Oh, and even, you know what? There is kind of a connection there or a resemblance there. Wasn't it in season 1 where they find the body, that it's a mannequin?
A dummy, yeah.
The dummy, right? And that the way they find that, the way it looks all white and kind of just dry and all that, that looks like Palmer from Twin Peaks when they pull it out of the water.
H.P. Geiger, the alien imagery from the Alien films, that comes through in the Demogorgon and Vecna. They're very much in that sort of vein.
Yeah, their whole playing Dungeons and Dragons, that also ties into the whole satanic cult kind of vibe. They're like, oh, look, see these kids playing those evil Dungeons and Dragon things. It's like, wait, what? Nothing bad happens.
The satanic panic of the 80s.
Yeah.
And you get that a lot through the character of Eddie, as we mentioned. He listens to heavy metal music, and, you know, heavy metal and heavy rock was being blamed in the 80s for causing kids to do satanic suicide pacts and all this kind of crazy stuff.
I'm thinking season 1, also when they first started realizing about the upside down and alternate dimension or reality, that kind of touched on some of the 80s science films. There was Real Genius with Val Kilmer was an 80s film. My Science Project was an 80s film. And so when you have
Back to the Future, maybe?
Back to the Future, yeah, sciencey. But when they're talking to that their science teacher, when they call him up and they're trying to, how would you create a sensory deprivation tank? And it's like, what? You guys are no, it's just for fun. How will we do it? You know, so that also has that vibe of 80s science of young kids tinkering with stuff that, you know, there are, you know, adults making professional livelihoods out of this research, and here's some kids tinkering with things that are like, wait, why don't you just go outside and throw a baseball, a football, ride a bike? But no, here they are doing these things that are like, whoa.
Right. So a bit of Halloween in there. Some of the scenes of the Hawkins streets and houses looked a bit similar to Halloween.
Yeah, the camera angles, yeah.
I saw that Robert Englund out of Nightmare on Elm Street had a cameo in there somewhere. I don't know what his role was, but he gets credited with being a part of Stranger Things.
Yeah, he did come out. I don't remember which season it was. Yeah, he was in there.
Yeah, Freddy Krueger.
Yep.
And I saw a little tribute to Brian De Palma's Carrie. At the beginning of season 4, you've got 11 and she's relocated to California. She's going to this new school. She's getting bullied by Angela and her friends. And she's at the roller skating rink. And they're all sort of making fun of her. And she falls over and she gets doused with a drink, like a fruit drink. And it's all over her. And it's
like a red drink, huh?
Yeah, a red drink. It's just like Carrie getting doused in the pig's blood. And being bullied and tortured and stuff. And of course, Carrie's got telekinesis, these powers, and Eleven's got them as well. So I thought that was a nice little nod to Carrie there.
And you being a music person, what did you make of them listening to the 8 tracks and the vinyl records in that first season with, again, the brother that disappears, goes in the upside down, his older brother's there, and he introduces him to some music.
Yeah,
that song. Yeah,
he's making mixtapes for him. It's got the Clash, and you see him listening to Joy Division and stuff. And of course, the main song that features throughout this show is Kate Bush's "Running Up That Hill," which has been responsible for a resurgence in Kate Bush's career 40 years on. That record became a hit all over again. It was #1 in the charts. And I just wonder why it was Kate Bush over all the other 80s artists it could have been. who was chosen to have her music featured. So, you know, Max, the character who gets targeted by Vecna, and he's trying to lure her into this upside down hell world and take her life. The only way she can save herself from it is by listening to this cherished piece of music. And it's running up that hill, which he has on non-stop loop on a Sony Walkman. And what is it about Kate Bush? My research has shown that Kate Bush is very steeped in occult mystery school teachings, studies, knows a lot about all of that. You see it throughout her music and her artwork and stuff. So I don't think it would have been an accident that it was Kate Bush. You know, why was she not listening to Weird Al or I don't know,
Michael Jackson, Billy Idol, Billy Joel?
Yeah, any of those artists, you know, Black Lace, Agadoo, why not? Why was it Kate Bush?
Yep. And then, like you're saying, that even here, also here in the States, that her music, that song, top of the charts. And it's like, if that doesn't tell you how much media, you know, TV shows, movies, and all that influence societal behaviors, I mean, come on, you know, that shows you how many millions of people watched this show and that resonated or that got stuck in their claw, in their consciousness, that they went out and started, you know, they weren't going out and buying the vinyl CDs or cassettes, but they were streaming. Now all the, you know, iTunes and Spotify and everywhere, that triggered that reaction. So again, it's like cause and effect. Look at how they can get people to do things like, look, whether intentionally or not, but look at what happened.
Yeah, my daughter loves that Kate Bush record. She's hearing it for the first time, you know, as a direct result of this show. I couldn't have got her interested in it. Only the show could.
Right.
Yeah. So Kate Bush has done very well out of it. And I did notice, talking about programming and pushing of subliminal ideas, there was one scene where it focuses in on a chemtrailed sky. And it looks like the chemtrails have been harped as well. And then it sort of pans down from the sky to the landscape. But they couldn't resist getting a chemtrailed sky in there. And the chemtrail agenda wasn't actually running in the 1980s. It started sometime in the 90s, seemingly. But there it is, right there in the show, creating the idea that skies have always looked like this.
Yep. That wouldn't happen to be that season where I remember them running up a hill with like big antennas trying to broadcast something. Remember?
Yeah, it was that one. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Because I'm like, yeah, clear skies. One of the few times there were clear skies when they did that. And he was transmitting, I guess, over the phone or barely starting internet or something, that he had a girlfriend he met in summer camp.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, they set up a radio transmitter. And they start singing Limahl's Never-Ending Story to each other over the friggin' radio.
There we go. Yeah, that was kind of hard to watch. It was, it rings with familiarity. I remember Never-Ending Story, but then to see them singing it, I was like, oh boy, really? They went there? That one didn't hit the charts. So, I don't know.
And you said it right there. They were running up that hill. There's the Kate Bush title again. And another of Kate Bush's records from the same album actually was Cloud Busting. And the video to it, which was directed
I thought that was familiar. I was going to say something earlier. I was like, no, I didn't say that. It was that one. Okay.
Yeah. It features Donald Sutherland playing the part of Wilhelm Reich. And it's all about his orgone energy cloud busting technology, weather modification, which is all about, cloud seeding and changing the weather. And Kate Bush knew all about that. And that section is a bit like the video to it. So more Kate Bush sly references.
Just a coincidence, mate.
Of course it is.
Always.
And then the only other thing I wanted to mention is that Yuri, that crazy Russian guy, the pilot, who betrays Hopper and Joyce and Murray, seems to be channeling Sacha Baron Cohen's Borat character. Some crazy sort of comedy persona coming over there and a comedy accent to match.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I'm sure I've missed loads. I mean, just that alone.
Me too.
The fact that these program makers were able, see it there? What's in a word?
Yeah.
Were able to get so much into this show and we've probably just scratched the surface. There's bound to be stuff that we've missed. It's just incredible to me that you can make all that happen. And I'm going to take that as inspiration for my next novel. I'm going to try and get as many allegories and metaphors and stuff into my next story as these guys have managed. Is there anything else that we've not discussed that you took away from that show?
Well, with the music, the theme, it fits in nicely with that time frame with the electronic synthesizer. That theme, that soundtrack, I downloaded that soundtrack after the first season. I was like, I love this music. This is cool.
Actually, the theme to A Clockwork Orange was a little bit similar to that.
And even that with the words synthesize music as opposed to, organic regular drum or strings, percussion things, synthesize, synthetic. And yet, look, artificiality, going towards artificiality.
AI.
That's important. Yeah, there you go.
All right, man. Well, I think we're about done here. Great discussion. Made a bit of a change to get away from all the doom and gloom and all the dark and heavy stuff for a change. I mean, some of this was dark and heavy, but you know what I mean. I don't often have a discussion about entertainment these days.
Right. No, this was cool. Yeah, you reached out to me. I appreciate that. And yeah, I should have researched a little more, could have, but hey, life is going on too.
Well, so many movies to watch, so little time, right?
Exactly. Like I told you, man, if you get a chance, these two probably not to watch with your children, but Westworld is very interesting. Evil, that's very interesting. People should watch those because recent seasons of the last 2 seasons of those 2 shows, blatant slaps in the face of what's happening in the world. Everything from quote unquote vaccines, viruses, DNA influence, it's all in there. And it's like, it's just a coincidence. Everything from rebellion, revolution, economics, rise, fall, all that kind of stuff. It's in there. But again, just a coincidence. So,
yeah. Just in case listeners aren't aware, you do a great show with Francesco over in Italy. Can You Handle the Truth in Music? Which is also a welcome distraction away for me from all the doom and gloom and all the bloody heavy, horrible information that I have to absorb. I really enjoy slotting one of those CDs in the car and driving around listening to some empowering music and listening to you guys talking about it. I mean, it's sort of 9 parts discussion to 1 part music, but still a great show. So why don't you tell people about that show and some of the guests you've had on and, where they can get hold of new episodes?
All right. Well, thanks for that little shout out / plug. But Francesco, it was his baby, inspired from your Sound of Freedom. He wanted to do a show of conscious music, or anything that has some truth in it that, besides bitches, hoes, and my bling. So yeah, he reached out to me and we just, right off the top, it was easy to start with some of the songs you had already brought on to your Sound of Freedom, and then discussing them, breaking them down, what we think this means, what this represents, and so forth. So we did that. We brought on Joe Murray. We had you on there. We've had, I think even Diesel Automatic recently joined us. So yeah, and
Sean McCann, Nathan Redette.
Sean McCann, Nathan Redette. Oh yeah, there's a ton of people because everybody brings their own flavor. So you have people that like hip hop, they'll bring hip hop. People that like old regular 60s, 70s music, bring that up. People that are into country, there might be even a couple country songs. Regular pop music. So yeah, it's interesting how if you actually listen and dig a little bit, there's plenty of music out there that has truth in there, consciously, created. And, we just try and go through and find those. And if we can't find it all, that's why we reach out to other people that might have, several tracks that we never heard of. And that always happens. So, yeah. Now it's getting a little harder to find tracks because you've played a good amount on your shows. We've kind of scratched, as deep as we can. So we're trying to find other people that might have some tracks that we've never heard. Or maybe we might just go back and do a best of or highlights, and just bring back some tracks that are good to, reinforce. But yeah, Francesco has that on his One Great Work Network page. He has links to those shows as well as on his Odyssey page. and I have them on my One Great Work Network, and I also have them linked on freeyourmindaz.com.
Truth Country. That's an interesting thought.
I know, and some of it's funny too. Sometimes it's good to laugh because there's sometimes some songs that are funny, very funny, and sometimes explicitly funny, but yet they have truth in there that you can't deny. You're like, that's funny as hell, but it's true. It's true. That's why you gotta laugh, because it's so freaking true.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I guess I will speak to you again when I get a new book out, and it's your time to interview me again, if not before. But I'm sure we will before.
Yeah, we'll chat before. I'll probably invite you to do something with me on one of my shows, because I'm reigniting Guy Next Door Speaks, but as a spinoff with Guy Next Door Speaks on film, music, and TV, or film, TV, and music. And so I already did one with Douglas Martin, where we broke down 2 films or discussed 2 films. And I have, in fact, tomorrow, I'll be speaking with Mark Passio and have him on the show. So, the floor is always his. So to see what films, TV, and music he has to talk about. And, I got to bring Joe Murray on to get into some music. I like to bring you on so we can talk some music, and even maybe some more TV, some other films and stuff. So, yeah, it's good for people to realize that just because you watch these programs, it's also good to watch these programs to learn how you can deprogram yourself. So when you can see and hear things like, oh, I see their intention there, how they're getting me to, fall under this agenda, and you can recognize it. So it is important to address these things, and not just to ignore them like in a new age bullshit kind of way of just ignore the negative and it'll go away. Nope, that's not how it works.
Sure. Wouldn't it be just crazy to discover that Mark Passio likes relaxing to the Carpenters or Celine Dion or ABBA or something like that?
That would be incredible. Yep.
But probably not.
I'll ask him.
Ask him his favorite Carpenters song. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right, Mark.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on today.
This is just for fun.
I'm picking up vibrations. I'm picking up vibrations. I'm picking up vibrations.